Romans 13.
You gonna start a fight tonight? I'm ready for it.
A fight?
Yeah.
Why? How do you interpret Romans 13?
Well, obey voted for people like Fauci,
Oh, about obeying.
unelected officials.
Oh, we're not going there.
Oh,
We might go there. Now that you brought it up.
I'm what they call an instigator, I suppose.
An instigator.
My favorite.
Yeah, you know what? Where are you going to draw the line there? That's right. Well, you know what? What's the verse to? I don't mean unelected officials. What's the verse you would use if you're going to disobey the government?
It's better to obey God than man.
Say that again.
It's better to obey God than man.
Yeah.
Better obey God rather than obey man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And who said that?
Paul?
No.
I did too say it.
It was Peter. Peter said that. They arrested him. And they wanted them to stop preaching about Jesus. And he said, we're obeying God. We're obeying God.
God already gave me an immune system. I don't need a fake one.
So they get.
God already gave me a sufficient immune system. I don't need a synthetic one.
Yeah, I had my gallbladder. No, I didn't have my gallbladder out. My mother had it. I had my appendix out. Yeah, what's that thing for?
It's for the back of the book.
Oh, that's terrible. Yes, for the back of the book. Anyway, I had that out in the tonsils, too. I had my tonsils.
That's the worst thing they could have done to me.
What? Done what?
Remove my immune system.
Oh.
The tonsils.
Well, anyway, we are going to preach what I'm going to call here tonight the Christian walk, Romans 13, verses 1 through 14. 1 through 14. Father, bless the preaching this evening. And may you just guide us. May we learn something and put this to use in our life now. In Christ's name I pray. Amen. If you're in trouble with a debtor or a creditor, thank you. What are you supposed to do?
See, I'm sorry, can I pay you tomorrow?
Run to the creditor or run from the creditor?
Run to him.
You run to him. Now, I advise people that, but what do people do? They run away. They what? They try to get more credit, but that's running to the creditor. They get more credit somewhere else to pay the other creditor. They do one. They do, you know, they're trying to make amends, but they a lot of times they run the wrong way. Man, I've known people that got an inheritance and they blew it in 6 months. The whole lot, the whole thing. Just and this is before I was pastoring, and not that I gave them any advice, but man, they just unbelievable what people do. Anyway, if you were in trouble or there's rules to obey, you're experiencing a little of this right now. There are rules to obey. Are you better off to just be upfront and obey the rules or disobey the rules? Obey the rules. What did it cost us by not obeying the rules? Pardon? $300. I'm going to round it off. Let's say to obey the rule was $50. When I finally said, no, we're going to obey the rules, I went and we had already started construction. Without getting a permit. We already started construction. And then I said, no, we're not doing this. We're going down there. So I saw the county. Well, they fined me another $300. So instead of costing me $50, it cost me $350. $300 isn't the end of the world, but if it was $300,000, that would have been an issue. That would have been issues. But it is, and let's begin. Let every soul be subject. We've already prayed. Every soul be subject unto the higher powers. For there's no power but of God, the powers that are ordained of God. By the way, who did not obey the governor when it was time to shut down all the homes down in Texas? Lester Roloff, and they got all kinds of preachers out blocking the way from the sheriff and all, and they had, kind of locked arms. They wouldn't let them in. What ended up happening? Anybody? I think they shut the homes down. They didn't open up the homes until George Bush became governor there. And what happened to Lester Roloff? I think the day before or the day after, there was a woman governor, a Democrat, that brought all that on, or made it even worse. Oh, and he spent time in jail for it. Do you know what happened to Lester Roloff? I don't know where it fits into the mix. Anybody know what happened to Lester Roloff in the Jubilee? A plane accident. Their plane went down. A lot of these preachers, they go get a flying license. And why would they do that? Get a pilot's license to go hop from church to church. They have a meeting and they fly their own plane. Why do that? I don't know what the motive is, but why do that? What would be the motive? Huh? Cheaper, yeah, the penny pinchers. Saving money. It cost him his life. And, Pastor Thompson tried to get his pilot's license. He was going to do it, and I think he finally got his pilot's license. He may have got it. He said in class, and he decided he's not going to fly. Why not just let the pros fly? Because if you make some wrong moves, it's toast time. You're going down. So I think he had his pilot's license, and he was going to do that and do what the other big boys do. But I think he decided to opt out. This is what I think when we say we learned in class, it's just one of his stories. He decided not to fly.
You gotta make sure you can trust your mechanic.
Oh yeah, trust your mechanic.
You cannot be sure that you've been treated good.
Well, anyway, he took this verse, let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. And so he was saying he was being subject to God and not to the governor. And so he was going to keep his homes open. They probably wanted to make rules, regulations, and they hate God, and they hate anything to do with Jesus, so they're just going to do their best to shut it down. And I know he fought it. And for part of the time, he ended up going to jail. How many days does it take to read the Bible through while you're sitting in jail? Anybody know? Because he sat in jail and then read his Bible through, just straight through, between eating and sleeping. I think it was like 5 days. He read it through. 5 days, 6 days, something like that. It wasn't like 5 weeks. It was just a matter of days. He read his whole Bible through. So anyway, we have all D words, and for the Christian, what we're supposed to be is subject unto the higher powers. No power but of God, the powers that are ordained of God. Was Nebuchadnezzar ordained of God?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to say yes. God sent that as the chastening hand. God uses men. Whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid. For he beareth not the sword in vain, for he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. A minister of God would have been Nebuchadnezzar, that's one. Another one is the one where he drove his, is it Jehu? He drove his chariot furiously. That's Jehu, for he driveth furiously. Isn't that what it says? Jehu, for he driveth He driveth his chariot furiously. You know the verse? Yeah, the hot rod's coming down the street and it's a big cloud of dust, and he drives his chariot like a madman. And they said, oh, that's Jehu. Well, he was a minister of God. He was sent to kill who? Jezebel and all the rest of them people. But he ended up being a bad king too, because he followed the sins of Jeroboam. But Jehu was the minister of God. Well, what are we? Are we ministers of God in some respects? But what are we? Ministers of righteousness. We're ministers of Christ, and there's a difference. So, and we're talking about the ministers of God here. So our first point is the duty. We have a duty to obey the ordinances that are placed upon him by these men that rule and reign over us. And they've been ordained of God, and they've been placed there. So the Christian walk is not to resist that. The Christian walk is to obey these rules and regulations. We're supposed to do that. And now, nobody has been knocking on our door. I'm trying to think of people knocking on our door. When we changed the hands of the building next door, my mother owned it, and I finally bought it from her. Mom and dad owned it. My dad died, then my mom owned it. Then I bought it from her, but man, the Snoop Dogs came in there. They said, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do the other. And what was I to do? We couldn't operate unless we did that. So we did this and we did that, and so we just obeyed the rules. They used to have Osha would come in on a regular basis. So anything that was operating, any machinery, and I know all kinds of companies were having the same problem, because I knew the owners of a lot of companies around here, and they were having a problem with Osha. Osha got real sticky. They were sending out Snoop Dogs everywhere. And so we knew that Osha was coming in to do an examination. So we have a Craftsman drill press over there. Well, there's no guard on the top of where the pulleys are. You just turn it on, you start drilling holes. And so they would say, well, you could get caught in there, and this could happen, or the other thing could happen. And one of the guys, I don't know if I said it, I said, well, if they get caught in there, they deserve to get caught in there. How could you get caught in there? Unless you want to get caught in there. We had to cover everything up. We had to make, we took what they call screening. I think it was half-inch screening, and we cut it up. It was antique too. I mean, this stuff had to be from 1920. We cut it up. It was more dangerous. The guards we put on were more dangerous with the guards than without the guards. You'd end up getting cut or poked with the wires and all. I said, well, it didn't come that way from the factory. We bought it right from the factory. And it didn't come with all these guards on it. But no, you had to put all these guards everywhere. And if you didn't have the guards on, you had to unplug the machine and put out of order. It was out of order. So the guys, what they would do to get a good laugh, they knew that OSHA was coming and we'd be working away. They would unplug everything that wasn't being used, and they made all these out of order signs and put them on with strings and hung them on all the machines. And so the Snoop Dogg, he'd come in and he'd do his inspection, and he'd say, well, you pass. As soon as he would leave, all the out of order signs would come off, and everything would get plugged back in. It was ridiculous. It was just ridiculous. Finally, they stopped it.
When was that?
Oh, this has got to be, I would say late 70s, mid to late 70s. They just got sticky about everything. But it is our duty to obey them. There are rules that do make sense. Some of the rules they have make sense. And it's our duty to obey those.
You talk about Jimmy Carter's guys?
Jimmy Carter, and what is Jimmy Carter? Is he a believer or an unbeliever?
Unbeliever.
Well, no, Jimy Carter is supposed to be a Christian. I mean, it just shows you where Christians' heads are at. Yeah, it was a mess. It is the duty of us to do that. Verse 5, wherefore ye must needs be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake, knowing that we've done the right thing. It is the duty of the people in a country to obey those that have the authority of the higher powers that has been ordained of God. We are to obey that. You know, it says road closed, or it says drive slow, or stop. They put up stop, drive slow. I mean, those are rules that are set up, and they usually send out a cop so they can waste the little flashers all day long doing that, and he's directing traffic. Sometimes it's appropriate, sometimes it's overkill. But sometimes they don't do that, and you get in accidents, don't you, Mr. Tucker? We got in an accident like that. The duty. And we are to obey those things. And I wouldn't say whatever. Where did you not want to go today? What was the name you didn't want to go to? Doctor Who? Is there a hey, by the way, isn't there a Doctor Who?
That's a TV program, British TV program.
Oh, that was. I never saw it. There was a Doctor Who. Well, who's the Dr. Fauci? You know, if they're going to make us...
Oh, yeah, that guy.
If they're, well, you brought it up, I didn't. Yeah. See how easily you forget. You forget.
Well, I didn't know I didn't want to go anywhere today.
Yeah, you didn't want to go there.
Go to work to come
Well,
back.
are we going to obey Dr. Fauci when the government says that we're supposed to? We must get a
The
vaccination.
Bible says don't get no jabs in your arms.
Oh, tattoos? Are you liking
No
that?
piercings.
Oh, a piercing?
And
Well, I don't think that piercing
they
means
won't
that
let me
piercing.
stick somebody with my knife. I'm not going to let them stick me with their needle.
Yeah, oh, I know. I'm not saying you should get a vaccination. I don't
It's
plan
not
to
even
get a vaccination.
but let's not get
If that's it, man, let's, I guess load me in the cattle car. I don't know, I might change my mind when it's time to get in the cattle car. I don't know. But we're supposed to obey, but we're supposed to be a God above man when there's a clear choice.
My mommy told me to beware of people like that.
Beware of who?
Crazy people in white suits.
Oh,
Well, I always obey my mommy when it comes to that.
I don't blame you. If they require it, and you said you've heard rumblings. I got one of my kids talking about that. It's going to get crazy in the fall, that they're going to cut off the money. It means, Mrs., you and I aren't going to get our Social Security. They could probably turn that off. And then what's the other thing they're going to do, Mrs. T? Cut the money off, and force you to get the vaccination. Now, I could see that that's possible. Is there going to be a big revolt in this country?
Small revolt.
A small revolt? There would be, what I'm trying to bring up, the two things, cutting the money off, that's the big no-no. That's where it hurts. And vaccinated, what, pardon? Oh, to the unvaccinated. Boy, there's going to be people that have to, if that comes to that, they have to make some kind of a big choice here.
I got vaccinated.
Choose wisely, my
I
son.
already had this stuff, but I got the antibodies from when I had it in '97.
So, I think there's going to be a huge revolt. If they cut the SS off, the guns will be coming out. There'll be something coming out.
And it's a story.
Or if they try to vaccinate everybody, force you to do it. Now, physically force, that's another issue. But if they try to get it, say, well, cut the money off unless you get vaccinated, give you some motive to get the vaccination, there's still going to be a revolt against that. I say there's going to be a revolt. And I think they know it. But could it be possible that they try it? I don't know. He's reading Rumblings. I got Missy. She's reading Rumblings of the fall. Well, if it's the fall and that's the rapture, I'm ready, man. Let's get out of here. But it is the duty of the people to obey.
If they cut off my internet, then I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Oh, yeah, well, that won't hurt me. Verses 6 and 7. For this cause pay ye tribute also. Now, I don't know how people run to these verses and say they don't have to pay taxes. I don't know how they run there. And they run to the one where Jesus pays the temple tax. And they say, well, that's not the same tax. There's people on the radio. They say you shouldn't be paying income tax. That's against that amendment really isn't an amendment. I don't know. Is that 1913 or something?
Yeah.
1913. On and on it goes.
Christmas night.
Whatever the arguments are, folks, when April the 15th comes, pay your taxes. For this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. Render therefore to all their dues. So there's the duty and there are the dues that we owe them. The dues. Tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. We're to pay these dues. You've got new rules and regulations. Is there a fee connected to it? Their dues. They got to get money out of you. They're going to milk it out of you one way or another. It never ends. It never ends. They're going to milk it out of you. But it's our duty, the Christian walk, is to obey. That's the duty. And then the second is the dues. We have to pay these dues, what they are owed. All right? I mean, you think about all the roads, everything, the bridges. This all costs money.
Well, I use it.
It all costs money, the dues. It says in verse 8, owe no man anything. So we are to pay a debt. Our third point is the debt. We do owe something. Owe no man anything. They use that verse and preachers use that verse saying this, that the church should never get a loan. Owe no man anything. They'll go right there and they'll say, we're not getting any loan to build a church. Did we get a loan to build this church? Yes? No? Yes, it was a big one too. It was a monstrous loan. It was a big loan, and we paid it off. It's all paid off. So how do we fulfill owe no man anything? How do we fulfill that when we did owe the money? Anybody know how you fulfill that? Not by paying it off. Pardon? Oh, there's collateral. Yeah, they could have come and just confiscated the land. But how do we when we sign the papers, when we meaning me, when I sign the papers, there's an agreement. At the first of the month, you owe this much money. If you don't pay it by the 15th, you owe a penalty. Well, we always paid on time. We were never late. So we'd make the payment. We fulfilled our obligation that the bank set up, meaning we paid the payment always on time. We owed them. On the first of the month, every month, we owe that much money. So we never owed them anything. We always paid the debt. So we fulfilled the agreement. But there's other preachers that say, we're not getting a loan. Now, who's right? Am I right or are they right? I don't think both of us can be right. Who's right? Maybe I'm wrong.
Don't borrow so much you can't afford to pay it back.
Well, but the bank loaned it to us, meaning then they felt that we could pay it back. They're not going to mismanage their money.
Your monthly payment.
They're not going to mismanage their money. They're not going to loan money without the thought of they're going to get it back. That would be very foolish on their part. So there is the debt, owe no man anything, but that's not the debt. This is what we owe, and we have a debt, and it's in verse 8. And Catherine, we brought up this morning, she had the right answer. But to love one another, that is our debt. And we owe that. For he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. You fulfill all the law by loving one another. And so this debt is never fully paid. It needs to be paid on a daily basis, right? Is that you continue to love one another each and every day, and you keep paying this debt back. This debt is never really fully paid. So that is the debt. It's not dollars and cents. The debt that we owe, it's not in dollars and cents, but people can pay that back, but it's to love one another. That is the true debt that you and I owe. As far as, now remember our topic is the Christian walk. The duty is to obey the government. The dues is what we owe them. And the debt that we will never pay off is loving one another. This is our walk. And then, what do people, as the general public out there, what don't they like about, they say, oh, the Bible, that's just a bunch of do's and what? I can't hear you, babe. Do's and don'ts. It's just a bunch of do's and don'ts. Thou shalt not do, thou shalt do. Thou shalt not do this and thou shalt do that. It's a bunch of do's and don'ts. Those are people that don't know the Bible, don't understand the Bible, never read the Bible, but they all sit around eating and drinking, agreeing. So there are the don'ts in verses 9 and 10. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not kill. Now let's count them off. That's 2. Thou shalt not steal. 3. Thou shalt not bear false witness. That's 4. Thou shalt not covet. That's 5. Now you might say, well, those have to deal with between me and man or me and God. Right now it doesn't matter. He names off 5. And if there be any other commandment. So he says, well, I named off 5, and there's a whole pile. And basically he's saying, and there's a whole pile of others. But we don't have the time, and I'm not going to write them all down. There's a whole Old Testament filled with them. Of all these don'ts, thou shalt not covet, and if there be any other command, is briefly comprehended in this saying. Namely, again, it's the debt. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. So if you want to fulfill the law and perform all the don'ts, just perform the debt, which means love one another. Love one another. Now listen, I'm telling you, throw the towel in, put up the white flag, and surrender to that. That's what you need to do. Just surrender to it. And love one another. It's like watching one of those old movies. The guy accidentally he's throwing a towel around in the corner, and he throws it in accidentally, and then fights over, throws the towel in. But there is the don'ts, and to fulfill the don'ts is to do the debt. To fulfill the don'ts, you do the debt. Love one another. And he brings it up again. Verse 11, and that knowing the time, and now it is high time to awake out of sleep. I'll tell you, this afternoon did I crash. Thomas came over, we ate. It was just the wife, myself, Esther, and Thomas. It was just the 4 of us. I got into the family room. And that is dangerous. I fall asleep. Who knows what that girl's going to do? And if she's alone with us, and you fall asleep, and I fall asleep, where's she going to have? I don't know where. Huh?
Appeared to be the babysitter.
She's responsible. Oh, she'd be so. Oh yeah, Grandma and Grandpa, they're sleeping. Nothing stops that kid. It's the ever-ready battery girl. It never shuts up and it never stops. I said, well, if you're going to have ice cream, you better keep your flapper shut. She ate by the way, she ate every stitch. Every stitch. I just calmly said, you're dead meat if you don't eat. And so she ate everything happily and joyfully. But man, if we fall asleep, I woke up And Thomas was sitting there, and others were they were on the. I woke up, and then there's nobody there, and I'm wondering where. I'm not worried about Thomas. I'm not worried about the wife. Well, where's the baby? I don't know where the baby is. They're playing in that heat in that porch. If it's hot outside, it's an oven in the porch. I don't know how they can stand it, but they're happy as lark. So the idea here, now knowing this, it's high time to awake out of sleep. For now is our salvation nearer than when we believe. And so the rapture is coming. There is the delay. Don't delay. Do this thing now of paying the debt, of loving, of listening to the authorities, paying their dues, and loving one another. And you'll get rid of you'll fulfill all the don'ts. He says, wake out of sleep and get busy doing this. Don't delay the delay. But what people do is they keep sacking out, snoring away, and they put it off and put it off and put it off and don't delay, man. The night is far spent. The day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. And so there's, in verse 12, there's the darkness. We're to cast that off in our walk. We're to do that. By the way, when you, in the dark and when you go to bed, I'd like to think you don't go to bed in your clothes, do you? I mean, does anybody here go to bed in their clothes? What do you put on? You don't have to tell me what you.
I only use my.
You don't have to tell me
I
what
only
you
have my
put.
clothes. I don't have anybody else's clothes.
Well, you don't have to disclose that. What do you put on?
A blanket.
You put on a blanket. All right. Well, it's the darkness, and so at night you put on pajamas, whatever those are. I mean, there's probably some weird ones out there too. You put on your night clothes. If it's the night before Christmas and all through the house, if you see the depiction of that, he puts on what women normally wear. But it is cold, and there probably no other than the fireplace in that house. In the night before Christmas, they put on this gunny sack. Probably it's made out of cotton, and he puts on a kerchief and a cap. They put a cap on with a little tassel on it. They dressed up like that. Well, would you want to go outside and walk around like that? Nowadays, probably if you go to that rib-off right now, there's a few people. I mean, we saw purple. Was that purple hair or pink hair? There was a girl down there with pink hair. Weird, just weird. Would you be ashamed in your night clothes, in your pajamas, walk up? We had people coming to the church in pajamas. I mean, don't they know they're dressed in pajamas? Don't they know that? I don't know. But if I was walking around in pajamas, I think I'd be a little ashamed. A little ashamed, right? It'd be like, what are you doing? Walking around like that. I think I used to have a nightmare when I was in school. I'm afraid I'm going to end up getting on the bus still in my pajamas. But there's the shame. I got this note next to this. Who knows where I got it? Probably from Bible believers. The shame of night clothes. The darkness. We are to cast off the works of darkness and all that shame. In the darkness, it's the shame of night clothes. And you have shame. So we're to cast that off and not participate in those things. The darkness. Verse 13, let us walk honestly, as in the day. So we're to walk around as if it were daylight, not in rioting and drunkenness, not in chambering and wantonness, not in strife and envy. Now, if you want to know what chamberness is and wantonness, just look it up in the dictionary. It ain't good. It's not good. We are to walk around as if it is the daytime, in full view, and where there is no shame. Casting off the works of darkness, and we walk around as if it were the daytime, where everybody can see its full exposure. Not in strife and envying. All right? It is the daytime. And last of all, you want to be able to do this, and last of all is the dress that you and I are to wear. But put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make not provision for the flesh to fulfill the lust thereof. Now listen, is this a tough sermon? Is that exactly what the Bible says? Pastor, we've heard it all before. I can only preach what's printed. Anything beyond that is out of my imagination. I have to be making it up. I just preach it exactly what it says. So we make this outline to make it easily understood so we can understand the flow of this. You say, well, we heard that all before. Yeah, we know and understand that. Well, then do it. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. And so week in and week out, we have these meetings to remind us as to what to do. You want to walk like a Christian, then you do this. Chapter 13. You know, people that I've known Christians, they called me on the phone wanting me to hook arms with them if we get enough people together so we don't pay our taxes. They run to these. Wasn't going to bring this up. I'll bring it up now. We won't pay our taxes. We're not paying our property tax. We're not paying taxes. We shouldn't pay taxes. They're doing all this illegally. Folks, pay your taxes. If you don't pay your taxes, eventually who's going to show up at your door? The government. Whoever the revenuer is, whoever's going to collect this money, and they are going to take you to court, they're going to win, and then they're going to legally go get your house, and it's going to hit the auction block, they're going to auction it off, and I personally know people that have had this happen, and they take your property, they get the money for it to pay the taxes that they refuse to pay. And they end up in shambles, the whole family in shambles over this. Just pay the taxes. Pay the taxes. How do you expect them to build the bridge without that? That's the Christian walk. These are the things that we are supposed to do. It isn't hard. It isn't hard. Just submit to that, and you'll be by far better off. Shake hands before leaving.